My daughter-in-law handed me a scrubbing brush for her party, not knowing I just sold the house she was standing in. Her eviction notice is the real gift, and the look on her face will be priceless. If you want to see how I humbled my ungrateful family, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now. My name is Eleanor. I'm 72 years old, and if you saw me at the grocery store, you'd probably think I'm just another sweet old lady baking cookies for her grandkids. You'd be dead wrong. For the last 3 years, I've been living in what used to be the guest suite of my own estate in Connecticut, while my son, Jason, and his nightmare of a wife, Vanessa, parade around the main house like they own the deed. They don't. Not yet, anyway. But they certainly act like they're doing me a favor by letting me live in my own basement, while they spend my retirement savings on designer handbags and leased luxury cars. It wasn't always this way. After my husband, Robert, passed, I was lonely. When Jason suggested they move in to help me maintain the property, I thought it was a blessing. I was naive. The realization that I was nothing more than an unpaid maid hit me hard this morning. I was in the kitchen, my kitchen, technically, though Vanessa had remodeled it with gray marble that looked like a mausoleum, chopping vegetables for their summer solstice soiree. That's what Vanessa called it. I called it an excuse for her to get drunk on expensive wine with 50 of her fakest friends. Vanessa walked in, her heels clicking on the hardwood floors like a metronome of misery. She didn't say good morning. She didn't ask how my arthritis was flaring up in the humidity. She just dropped a clipboard on the counter next to the onions. "Here's the updated itinerary for Saturday, Eleanor," she said, not even making eye contact as she typed furiously on her phone. "I need the patio power washed by noon tomorrow. The caterer canceled because they're incompetent, so you'll need to prep the hors d'oeuvres. I want those crab cakes you make, and do not be stingy with the crab meat this time. And please, for the love of God, keep the basement door shut during the party. We don't want that old house smell wafting up while we're trying to network." I stared at her, the knife trembling slightly in my hand. It wasn't fear, it was pure, unadulterated rage. She was treating me like hired help, except help gets paid. I was paying the property taxes, the utilities, and the insurance, while she played lady of the manor. Jason walked in a moment later, looking disheveled and avoiding my gaze. He grabbed a coffee pod, the expensive kind I bought, and leaned against the fridge. "Jason, did you hear this?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "Your wife expects me to cook for 50 people and power wash the patio at my age?" Jason sighed, the sound of a man who had given up his spine years ago. "Mom, come on, don't start drama. Vanessa's under a lot of pressure. This party is huge for her image. Just help her out, okay? It's family. We all pitch in." "Pitch in?" I practically screamed internally. I wanted to laugh in his face. Pitching in implies a shared effort. This was exploitation, plain and simple. But I didn't yell. I didn't throw the knife. I took a deep breath and looked at my son. Really looked at him. I saw the weakness in his jaw, the way he deferred to Vanessa's every whim. He wasn't the boy I raised. He was an accessory to her lifestyle, and I was the bankroll. "Fine," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "I'll handle the food. I'll make sure everything is perfect for your big day." Vanessa finally looked up from her phone. A smug, satisfied smirk plastered across her face. "See? Was that so hard? Oh, and Eleanor, try to make yourself scarce on Saturday evening. Maybe go to the library or something until the guests leave. It's just, the crowd is a bit younger, and we don't want things to feel geriatric." That was the moment. That was the snap. The final thread of my patience disintegrated. They didn't just want my labor, they wanted my absence. They wanted the house, the prestige, and the food, but they were ashamed of the woman who provided it all. I looked down at the clipboard, reading the ridiculous demands: premium champagne only, valet parking setup, shrimp cocktail tower. I smiled at her. It was a cold smile, one that didn't reach my eyes, but she was too self-absorbed to notice the difference. Of course, Vanessa, I wouldn't want to cramp your style. I'll make sure Saturday is unforgettable. And I meant it. As she sashayed out of the room, barking orders at Jason about the playlist, I wiped my hands on my apron. They thought I was a senile old woman they could bully into submission. They had no idea that I still had the phone number of the best real estate shark in the state, or that I had a meeting scheduled with my lawyer, Mr. Henderson, in exactly 2 hours. They wanted a perfect party. I was going to give them fireworks, but not the kind they were expecting. I pulled up my phone and dialed. It was time to initiate Operation Independence. I was done being the maid. It was time to be the landlord, and the eviction process was about to get very, very messy. I slipped out of the house while Vanessa was screaming at a florist on speakerphone about the specific shade of millennial pink for the peonies. She didn't even look up as I grabbed my purse and keys. To her, I was just a drone fetching supplies, invisible until I messed up or she needed money. "Don't forget the gluten-free crackers, Eleanor. My yoga instructor is coming," she hollered as the door clicked shut. I didn't answer. I had much bigger fish to fry than her yoga instructor's dietary restrictions. I drove my 10-year-old sedan into town, my heart pounding a rhythm of rebellion against my ribs. I wasn't going to the grocery store. I was headed straight to the law offices of Henderson and Associates. Arthur Henderson had been my late husband's attorney for 40 years, a man who wore three-piece suits in July and had zero tolerance for nonsense. When I walked into his mahogany-paneled office, I must have looked like a woman on a mission because he didn't offer me tea. He opened a notepad. "Eleanor," he said, peering over his spectacles, "you sound determined on the phone. What has Jason done now?" "It's not just Jason, Arthur," I replied, sitting straighter than I had in years. "It's the entitlement. They treat me like a squatter in my own home. I need to know exactly where I stand. The deed, the trust, everything. If I sell this place tomorrow, can they stop me?" Arthur pulled the file. He tapped the paper with a Mont Blanc pen. "The house is 100% in your name, Eleanor. Jason is a beneficiary in the will, yes, but until you pass, he has no legal claim to the property. You could burn it down if you wanted to, though I wouldn't recommend it for insurance reasons." "I don't want to burn it down," I said, a cold smile touching my lips. "I want to sell it. Cash, fast, and I want the closing date to coincide with their little reality check. Oh, and Arthur, I want to draft a codicil to my will. I'm cutting Jason off, not a cent." Arthur raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. He knew how much I had sacrificed for that boy, paying off his student loans, funding his failed startups, letting his viper of a wife walk all over me. He drafted the paperwork and I signed with a flourish. Next, I met with Brenda, a real estate shark I'd known from the country club days. She was the type of woman who could sell ice to a polar bear and make him thank her for the deal. "I have a developer," Brenda told me, leaning across the table at the coffee shop where we met to avoid prying eyes. "He's been dying to get his hands on your lot. He doesn't care about the house. He wants to tear it down and build luxury condos. He'll pay cash, no inspection, 30-day close." "Perfect," I said. "Draw it up. But Brenda, this has to be silent. No for sale signs, no open houses. I don't want them to know until the ink is dry." Driving back to the estate, I felt lighter. The power dynamic had shifted, and they didn't even know it. I stopped at the market to buy the stupid crab meat and gluten-free crackers, playing the part of the obedient servant one last time. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Vanessa's leased Range Rover parked crookedly, blocking the garage. Typical.
I hauled the groceries into the house through the side door. The house was quiet, which was suspicious. I crept toward the kitchen and heard voices drifting from the sunroom. Vanessa was holding court with her friend Jessica, sipping what looked like my vintage Chardonnay. Honestly, it's just a waiting game, Vanessa was saying, her voice dripping with that fake sympathy that made my skin crawl. Eleanor is really slipping. She forgets things constantly. Jason and I are looking into assisted living facilities. Once we get power of attorney, we can finally renovate this place properly. I mean, can you believe this wallpaper? It's giving haunted mansion vibes. I froze in the hallway, clutching a bag of lemons. Assisted living? Power of attorney? They weren't just waiting for me to die, they were actively planning to have me declared incompetent so they could seize control while I was still breathing. The sheer audacity took my breath away. They wanted to lock me away in a home so they could gut my house and spend my money without guilt. Does Jason agree? Jessica asked. Oh, you know Jason. Vanessa laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. He'll do whatever I tell him. He knows I deserve this house after putting up with his mother for 3 years. I silently backed away, retreating to the kitchen. My hands were shaking, not from age, but from pure adrenaline. If I had any doubts before, they were incinerated in that moment. I wasn't just teaching them a lesson anymore. I was fighting for my life and my freedom. I started unpacking the groceries, slamming the cans onto the counter, a little harder than necessary. Vanessa sashayed into the kitchen 10 minutes later, looking flushed from the wine. Did you get the premium crab meat? She asked, not even looking at me. I hope you didn't cheap out, Eleanor. Jessica's husband is in finance and he knows quality. Only the best for you, dear, I said, turning to face her with a smile that hid the dagger behind my back. I also spoke to a friend today. She gave me some wonderful advice about future planning. Vanessa's eyes lit up, assuming I meant I was finally going to sign over the deed. Oh, that's great. We should definitely talk about that after the party. But right now, I need you to start prepping. Chop chop, Eleanor. Don't worry, I replied, pulling my favorite chef's knife from the block. The blade glinted in the afternoon sun. I spent the rest of the afternoon making crab cakes, channeling every ounce of my anger into the mixture. They thought they were playing chess, but they didn't realize I had already flipped the board. The developer's offer was coming in tomorrow. The party was Saturday, and by Sunday morning, Vanessa's entire world was going to crumble. I just hoped she enjoyed the crab cakes. It would be the last expensive meal she'd ever eat on my dime. The clock was ticking, and for the first time in years, I was the one holding the stopwatch.
Friday morning arrived with the subtlety of a freight train. I was up at 5, not because I wanted to be, but because Vanessa had left a sticky note on my bathroom mirror that read, "Baseboards need scrubbing. Don't forget the guest bath." The sheer audacity of sticking a chore list to my personal mirror made my blood boil, but I reminded myself of the end game. Every scuff I scrubbed, every toilet I sanitized was just one more deposit in the bank of my vengeance. By 10 o'clock, the house was a hive of chaotic energy. A rental company was setting up a tent in the backyard, destroying my prize-winning hydrangeas in the process. I watched from the kitchen window as a 20-something guy in a tank top dragged a heavy crate right over my blooming azaleas. I started to tap on the glass to yell at him, but I stopped myself. Why bother? By Monday, those azaleas wouldn't be my problem. The developer was going to bulldoze the garden anyway. It was a strange, bittersweet liberation, watching my beloved garden get trampled and realizing I didn't care because the people inside the house were about to get trampled worse.
Jason wandered into the kitchen around noon, looking like a man walking to the gallows. He was holding a manila envelope and sweat was beading on his forehead despite the central air blasting at 68 degrees. Vanessa was in the living room barking orders at a terrified housekeeper she'd hired just for the day to do the high dusting, whatever that meant. "Hey, Mom," Jason said, his voice cracking slightly. He leaned against the island, trying to look casual but failing miserably. "Do you have a sec? Vanessa and I were going over some paperwork for the estate, just routine maintenance stuff, insurance updates, tax forms, mooring junk." I wiped my hands on a dish towel and turned to him. I knew exactly what this was, the conversation I'd overheard yesterday about power of attorney and assisted living echoed in my ears. "Oh, I thought Arthur handled all of that, Jason." "Well, yeah," he stammered, avoiding my eyes. "But Arthur is old school. We wanted to modernize things, digital records and all that. Just need your signature here, here, and here. It'll save us a ton of headaches later." He slid the papers across the marble counter. I put on my reading glasses, taking my sweet time cleaning the lenses. I saw his leg bouncing nervously. I looked at the top document. He had clipped a generic asset verification form to the front, but peeking out from underneath was the bold text, "Durable power of attorney, financial and medical." They weren't just trying to commit me, they were trying to steal my autonomy before the weekend started. They wanted control of my bank accounts, my medical decisions, and yes, the deed to the house. If I signed this, the sale I was setting up would be voided, and I'd be rotting in a state-run facility while Vanessa renovated my kitchen. I looked up at my son, the boy I had nursed through chickenpox, the man whose college tuition I had paid in full. He was looking at his phone, unable to witness the betrayal he was committing. "I don't have my grid pen," I lied, my voice trembling with a feigned senility. "And my hand is cramping up something awful today, Jason. This humidity just kills my joints. Leave it here. I'll look it over after the party when my head is clearer. Right now, I have 300 crab cakes to bread." "Mom, it really needs to be done today," Jason pressed, urgency creeping into his tone. "Vanessa wants it to be filed before the weekend." "Vanessa can wait," I snapped, dropping the facade for a split second before recovering. "I mean, surely the party is the priority. You don't want me to burn the appetizers because I was reading legalese, do you?" Before he could argue, Vanessa stormed in. "Jason, the tent guys are asking for a tip. Handle it. Eleanor, why aren't the linens ironed yet? The napkins look like trash." "I'm on it," I said, grabbing the iron. Jason snatched the papers back, clearly terrified Vanessa would see he failed to get the signature. He retreated, and I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. That was too close. An hour later, I told Vanessa I had to pick up her dry cleaning for the party. Her precious red dress needed specialized pressing. She practically shoved me out the door. I drove straight to a diner 3 towns over. Brenda was waiting in the back booth, a thick stack of documents in front of her. "The developer is motivated," Brenda said, sliding the contract toward me. "He wired the funds to the escrow account this morning. All cash, no contingencies. He wants possession in 30 days, but technically, once you sign this, the title transfer process begins immediately. We recorded Monday morning at the county clerk's office." I looked at the number on the page. It was more money than Jason and Vanessa would earn in 10 lifetimes. It was enough to buy a condo in Florida, travel the world, and still leave a donation to the cat shelter. "And the clause?" I asked. Brenda pointed to paragraph 14. "Right there. Seller retains occupancy for 30 days post-closing. Current occupants, non-owners, have 48 hours to vacate upon notice of sale." 48 hours. It was brutal. It was ruthless. It was perfect. I picked up the pen, my own pen this time, and signed my name, Eleanor Margaret Vance. With each loop of the cursive, I felt the heavy chains of obligation falling off my shoulders. I wasn't just selling a house, I was buying my freedom. Done, Brenda said, sealing the folder. Congratulations, Eleanor, you're a very wealthy woman, and a homeless one, technically. Not homeless, liberated, I corrected, sipping my iced tea. I drove back to the house with the dry cleaning hanging in the back seat. When I walked in, the transformation was nearly complete. The house looked like a magazine spread. Flowers everywhere, fairy lights strung up, catered bar being set up in the corner. It looked expensive. It looked exclusive. It looked like a house that belonged to someone young and rich. Vanessa was standing in the foyer admiring herself in the mirror. Finally, she huffed when she saw me. Did you check the hem? If they ruined it, I will sue them. It's perfect, Vanessa, I said, handing her the plastic-wrapped garment. Everything is going to be perfect. It better be, she muttered. Tomorrow is make or break. I have influencers coming, Eleanor. Influencers. Do not embarrass me. Stay in the kitchen, keep the trays full, and don't talk to anyone unless they ask for a napkin. Got it? Loud and clear. As I walked down the hall to my room in the guest suite, I patted the wall lovingly. Goodbye, old house. You served us well. I hope you enjoy your new owners. I went into my room and pulled a suitcase under the bed. I started packing quietly, just the essentials, jewelry, documents, photos. I hid the bag in the back of my closet. Tomorrow was the party. Vanessa wanted a night to remember. I was going to give her one. I was going to serve crab cakes with a smile, pour champagne for her pretentious friends, and watch the clock tick down. Because come Monday morning, the sheriff was coming to serve an eviction notice, and I intended to have a front row seat. The ink was dry, the money was in escrow, and the ticking time bomb was set. Let the festivities begin.
Saturday arrived with a humidity that made the air feel like hot soup. By 4 in the afternoon, my driveway, or rather the driveway currently occupied by the developer's future bulldozers, was transformed into a runway for the local nouveau riche. Vanessa had insisted on a Hampton chic dress code, which apparently meant white linen suits for the men and dresses that cost more than my first car for the women. I watched from the kitchen window as the valets I was paying for parked Porsches and Teslas on the lawn I used to meticulously weed. Vanessa swept into the kitchen, a vision in a white silk jumpsuit that looked like it would stain if you even breathed on it wrong. She surveyed the hors d'oeuvres spread with a critical eye, her nose wrinkling slightly as if she smelled something unpleasant. Eleanor, why are the napkins folded in triangles? I specifically sent you a Pinterest board that showed rectangles. It's cleaner, more modern. This looks like a diner. I can refold them, Vanessa, I said, my voice dangerously level. I didn't mention that I had been on my feet since 6 in the morning prepping the 300 crab cakes she demanded. No time, she snapped, checking her reflection in the microwave door. People are arriving. Just try to blend in, and please, don't trap the guests in long conversations about your knitting or your hip surgery. These are influential people. They don't need to be bored. I'll be invisible, I promised. And I meant it. I was a ghost in my own home, haunting the halls one last time before I crossed over into freedom. I spent the first hour circulating with a silver tray, offering champagne and crab cakes to people who didn't even make eye contact with me. I was just a pair of hands to them, a server, to be ignored. I heard snippets of conversation that made my stomach turn. They talked about summer homes in Aspen, which influencer was canceled, and whose marriage was on the rocks. It was a vapid, shallow echo chamber, and Vanessa was the queen bee. Around 7, the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the party.
I retreated to the periphery near the rose bushes to rest my aching feet. That's when I saw Vanessa holding court with a man in a black turtleneck and thick-rimmed glasses. I recognized him. It was Julian, a local architect known for designing monstrosities that looked like glass boxes. I moved closer, feigning the need to deadhead a rose, and listened. "The bones are good," Julian was saying, gesturing vaguely at my wraparound porch. "But it's dated. The Victorian vibe is so over. We need to gut the ground floor, open concept, blow out these load-bearing walls, put in floor-to-ceiling glass, bring the outside in." "Exactly," Vanessa squealed, clutching her wine glass. "I hate all these little rooms. It feels so claustrophobic. And I want to rip out this garden. It's too high maintenance. I'm thinking a sleek infinity pool and a concrete patio. Minimalist." "And the timeline?" Julian asked. "Oh, soon." Vanessa lowered her voice, conspiring. "My mother-in-law is fading. We're handling the legalities now. Once she's settled in a facility, we can break ground. Maybe by fall." My hand tightened around the gardening shears I had in my apron pocket. Fading? I was sharp enough to sell the ground out from under them without them noticing. They were planning to erase every trace of me, every memory embedded in these walls the moment they locked me away. The sheer cruelty of it nearly made me gasp, but I held it in. I walked back to the kitchen, my resolve hardened into diamond. Jason was in the pantry, hiding. He was halfway through a bottle of expensive scotch, his tie loosened, looking miserable. When he saw me, he jumped like a startled teenager. "Mom, great party, huh? Vanessa really outdid herself." "She certainly did," I said, grabbing a fresh tray of appetizers. "She's planning to tear down the house, Jason. Did you know that? She's out there with an architect planning to bulldoze your father's garden." Jason winced, rubbing the back of his neck. "Mom, don't start. It's just talk. She likes to dream. Besides, the house is old. It needs work. We're just thinking about the future. Our future." "And what about my future, Jason?" I asked softly. "Am I in the blueprints?" He looked away, unable to face me. "You'll be taken care of. We always take care of you." "Yes," I said, stepping out of the pantry. "I know exactly how you plan to take care of me." I went back out into the fray. The music had switched to a thumping bass beat that rattled the antique windows. The party was in full swing. People were dancing on the lawn, spilling drinks on the patio stones. I saw Vanessa standing on a chair, raising a toast. "To the future," she shouted, her face flushed with triumph and wine. "To new beginnings and big changes." "To new beginnings," the crowd roared back. I raised my own glass of water in the shadows. "To new beginnings," I whispered. A young woman in a sequined dress bumped into me, knocking the tray of crab cakes out of my hand. The food splattered on the patio. The music didn't stop, but the people nearby went silent. Vanessa descended from her chair like a hawk spotting a mouse. "Eleanor, look what you did. That's imported silk." She pointed to the girl's shoes, which had a speck of tartar sauce on them. "I told you to be careful. God, can you do anything right?" The guests watched, amused, as if this was part of the entertainment. The rich daughter-in-law scolding the clumsy old help. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice monotone. "I'll clean it up." "You better," she hissed, leaning into my ear so only I could hear. "This is exactly why you can't live here anymore. You're a liability." Get on your knees and clean this mess up before you ruin the vibe completely. I looked at her. I looked at the smear of sauce on the stone, and for a second I considered dumping the rest of the tray on her head, but I didn't. I knelt down. I picked up the crab cakes. I let her have this moment. I let her feel powerful, because I knew that in 48 hours, the only thing she would be cleaning was her own belongings out of a cardboard box on the sidewalk. Go to your room. Vanessa dismissed me once the spot was wiped. We don't need you out here anymore. Good night, Vanessa. Good night, everyone. I walked away from the lights and the noise, back into the quiet of the house. I went to my room, locked the door, and checked my phone. I had a text from Brenda. Everything is filed. The buyer's crew arrives Monday at 8 a.m. Sheriff is on standby for noon. I lay down on my bed, listening to the bass thumping below me, shaking the floorboards one last time. They were celebrating their imaginary victory, drinking my wine and planning my demise. Let them dance. Monday was coming, and the music was about to stop very abruptly.
Sunday morning dawned with the brutal clarity that follows a night of excess. I walked into the kitchen at 7 a.m., stepping over a discarded high heel and a shattered wine glass that someone had kicked under the island. The house smelled like stale beer, expensive perfume, and regret. Usually, my Sunday routine involved scrubbing the floors on my hands and knees while Vanessa slept off her hangover until noon. But not today. Today, I stepped over the sticky puddles. I ignored the mountain of dirty dishes in the sink that attracted a few early morning flies. It wasn't my mess anymore. It was the problem of the demolition crew coming in exactly 25 hours. I made myself a pot of coffee, using the last of the premium beans because why save them? And sat on the back porch. The yard was a disaster zone. The grass was matted down where the tent had been, cigarette butts littered my rose beds, and someone had actually thrown up in the bird bath. It was desecration, pure and simple. But as I sipped my coffee, I felt a strange sense of peace. The destruction had already started. The developers' bulldozers would just be finishing the job. Around 11, the house began to stir. I heard the heavy thud of footsteps upstairs, followed by the inevitable groans. Vanessa appeared first, wearing a silk robe and oversized sunglasses to shield her eyes from the offensive brightness of the day. She looked like a wreck. Her skin was sallow, and her hair was a bird's nest of tangles. "Coffee," she croaked, not even offering a hello. She slumped onto a bar stool, clutching her head. "God, Eleanor, why is it so loud in here? And why is this kitchen a disaster? I thought you would have cleaned up by now." "I'm taking the day off," I said, flipping a page of my book. "It's the Sabbath, after all." Vanessa lowered her sunglasses to glare at me, her eyes bloodshot. "Excuse me? The cleaning crew charges double on Sundays, you know that. We need this place spotless. Julian, the architect, is coming back tomorrow morning to take measurements for the renovation. I don't want him seeing this filth." "Julian is coming tomorrow?" I asked, suppressing a smile. "That's perfect timing." "Yes, it is," Jason added, shuffling into the room. He looked even worse than Vanessa, his face pale and sweaty. "So, Mom, about those papers, we really need to get the power of attorney signed today. If we're going to start construction, we need access to the equity line." They were relentless. Even hungover and standing in their own filth, their greed was the only thing keeping them upright. They honestly believed that tomorrow marked the beginning of their new empire. "Actually," I said, closing my book with a definitive snap, "I have good news. You don't need to worry about the papers anymore." Jason perks up, hope lighting his dull eyes. "You signed them? You sent them to Arthur?" "Better," I lied, enjoying the game. "I made a definitive decision about the property. I handled everything with a specialist on Friday. By tomorrow morning, the future of this house will be completely settled. You won't have to worry about a thing." Vanessa clapped her hands, wincing at the noise she made.
Finally! Oh my God, Eleanor, thank you. You knew I'd come to my senses. Does this mean we have full control? It means everything is going exactly where it belongs, I said cryptically. They were too self-absorbed to catch the nuance. They high-fived each other, literally high-fived, while I sat there drinking my coffee. They spent the rest of the day in a celebratory mood, ignoring the mess around them. They ordered takeout because we're celebrating and didn't offer me any. They sat in the living room, sketching on napkins, planning which walls to knock down first. The kitchen goes first, Vanessa declared, loud enough for me to hear. Gut it. Everything new, white marble, gold fixtures, no more of this depressing wood. I spent the afternoon in my room, packing the last of my things. My photo albums, my jewelry, the urn with my husband's ashes. I packed a small overnight bag and moved the rest of my boxes to the back door of the guest suite, ready for a quick exit. I checked my phone. Brenda had sent a confirmation text. Crew rolls out at 7:45 a.m., sheriff at 8 a.m. Good luck, Eleanor. That night, the house fell silent early. They were exhausted from their partying and secure in their victory. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling of the room I'd slept in for 3 years. I thought about the memories this house held, bringing Jason home from the hospital, Christmas mornings, the day Robert died in the master bedroom. I felt a pang of sadness, but it was fleeting. The house I loved was already gone. It had been replaced by a prison of disrespect and entitlement. Monday morning arrived with a gray, overcast sky, the air heavy with impending rain. I was up at 6, dressed in my best pantsuit, hair perfectly coiffed. I made coffee one last time, washed the cup, and dried it. I sat on the back porch swing watching the driveway. At 7:50 a.m., the ground began to vibrate. It wasn't an earthquake. It was the deep, guttural rumble of heavy diesel engines. I saw the first truck crest the hill. It was a massive yellow excavator on a flatbed trailer, followed by 2 dump trucks and a black SUV. The procession looked like a military invasion. They turned into the driveway, their air brakes hissing loudly, shattering the morning silence. Inside the house, I heard a window slide open. "What the hell is that noise?" Vanessa screeched from the second floor. I took a sip of my coffee and watched as the convoy ground to a halt on the front lawn. The doors of the SUV opened and 3 men in hard hats stepped out, followed by a man in a sheriff's uniform. The front door of the house flew open. Jason ran out in his boxers and a t-shirt looking terrified. Vanessa followed him, wrapped in a sheet, screaming, "Hey, you can't park there. This is private property," Jason yelled, waving his arms at the foreman. I stood up from the swing, smoothed my jacket, and walked down the steps to join them. It was 8:00 a.m. on the dot. Showtime. Jason was screaming so loud, I thought he might pop a blood vessel in his neck. He was standing on the lawn in his checkered boxers, pointing a shaking finger at the foreman, a burly man who looked like he ate guys like Jason for breakfast. "I'm calling the police," Jason shrieked, his voice cracking. "This is trespassing. My mother owns this land, and I am her power of attorney. Get these trucks out of here before I sue you into oblivion." The foreman didn't even blink. He just adjusted his hard hat and looked at his clipboard. "Work order is valid, buddy. Start date is today. Demolition of exterior structures and landscape clearing." "Demolition!" Vanessa screamed, clutching her sheet tighter around her as she stumbled down the stairs, nearly tripping over her own feet. "We ordered a renovation, you idiot! A renovation! Who are you people?" I took another sip of my coffee, savoring the bitterness, and slowly walked down the porch steps. The morning air was crisp, but the heat coming off my son and daughter-in-law was enough to warm the entire neighborhood. "Officer!" Jason yelled as the sheriff approached. "Thank God! Arrest these men! They're destroying my property!" The sheriff, a tall man named Miller, who I'd known for years from the Rotary Club, ignored Jason completely. He walked past him and tipped his hat to me. "Morning, Mrs. Vance. Moving day already?" "Morning, Sheriff," I replied smoothly. "You know how it is. Time for a fresh start." Jason and Vanessa froze. The silence that fell over the lawn was heavy, broken only by the idling rumble of the excavator. Jason looked from the sheriff to me, his brain trying to compute the impossible. "Mom," he whispered, "do you know these people?" "I certainly do," I said, stepping between my son and the sheriff. "This is Mr. Kowalski, the foreman for the development company. And you know Sheriff Miller." "But why are they here?" Vanessa demanded, her voice rising to that dog whistle pitch she used when a barista messed up her latte order. "Tell them to leave, Eleanor. We have the architect coming in an hour." "The architect isn't coming, Vanessa," I said, my voice calm and cold as ice. "And neither is the renovation crew. Mr. Kowalski is here because he has a job to do. He's here to clear the lot." "Clear the lot?" Jason stammered. "Yes," I continued, enjoying the confusion clouding their eyes. "Because as of Friday afternoon, I no longer own this house. I sold it." The words hung in the air like toxic smoke. Vanessa's jaw literally dropped. You sold it? To who? You can't sell it. We have rights. We have the papers." "The papers you never signed?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Or the papers I signed?" "Because the papers I signed transferred the deed to a commercial developer for a very, very large sum of cash. The deal is done. The money is in my offshore account. The house is theirs." "You're lying," Jason spat, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. "You're senile. You don't know what you're doing. I'll have this annulled. I'll have you declared incompetent." Sheriff Miller stepped forward, handing a thick envelope to Jason. "I wouldn't do that, son. This is a valid eviction notice. Pursuant to the sale agreement, unauthorized occupants, that's you two, have exactly 48 hours to vacate the premises before the structure is scheduled for full demolition. Technically, you're trespassing right now, but Mrs. Vance negotiated a grace period for you to get your stuff out." "48 hours?" Vanessa shrieked, looking at the excavator that was currently swinging its arm dangerously close to her prized rose bushes. But my party, my friends, my Instagram, we live here." "Not anymore," I said. "You treated this house like a hotel and me like the maid. Well, the hotel is closed and the maid has retired." "But the money," Jason looked at me with a mix of horror and greed. "You sold it for millions? Where's the money, Mom? We need that for the new apartment. We have debts." "I know you have debts, Jason." I stepped closer to him. "I know about the credit cards. I know about the loans. I know you are waiting for me to die so you could cash in. But guess what? I'm still alive, and I'm taking my money with me." Vanessa lunged at me. It was a feral, desperate move. "You selfish old witch! You ruined everything!" Sheriff Miller caught her by the arm before she could get within 2 feet of me. "That's enough, ma'am. Unless you want to spend your 48 hours in a holding cell, I suggest you start packing boxes." I looked at Vanessa, struggling in the sheriff's grip, her mascara smeared, her barefoot toes digging into the dirt. "Selfish?" I asked softly. "I gave you a home for 3 years. I cooked your meals. I cleaned your messes. And you plan to put me in a home and gut my life? This isn't selfishness, Vanessa. This is consequences." I turned to the foreman. "Mr. Kowalski, feel free to start on the garage. My car is already parked on the street." "You got it, Mrs. Vance," he grinned. He signaled the driver. The excavator roared to life, its gears grinding. The giant metal bucket swung around and smashed into the roof of the detached garage. The garage where Jason kept his golf clubs and Vanessa stored her vintage furniture collection. Crash! Wood splintered, glass shattered, and dust billowed into the air. "No!" Jason screamed, running towards the garage, but stopping short as a piece of siding flew past him. "My clubs! My stuff!" Better hurry, I called out over the noise of the destruction. The main house is scheduled for Wednesday. If I were you, I'd stop screaming and start moving. I picked up my purse from the porch swing, walked past my sobbing daughter-in-law and my shell-shocked son, and headed toward my car. I didn't look back at the house. I looked at the road ahead. I had a flight to catch, and for the first time in a long time, the schedule was entirely my own. But I wasn't leaving just yet. I had one final stop to make before I hit the airport, a little parting gift to ensure their humiliation was absolute.
I didn't look in the rearview mirror as I turned onto the main road. I didn't need to. The sounds of metal crunching and Vanessa's shrill screaming were etched into my memory, a symphony of justice that I would replay in my head whenever I needed a smile. But I wasn't done yet. I told them I was leaving, but I had a few errands to run before I officially vanished into my new life. The house was just the appetizer. Now it was time for the main course. My first stop was the bank. I walked in and the manager, Susan, waved me over. We had set this appointment up weeks ago. "Ready to finalize everything, Eleanor?" she asked, her eyes twinkling. She knew the situation. Small towns talk. "Absolutely, Susan. Close it all." I watched with grim satisfaction as she typed on her keyboard. We weren't just closing my personal accounts, we were closing the family accounts. See, years ago, I had added Jason to a high-limit credit card and a joint checking account for emergencies. Over the last 3 years, those emergencies had turned into trips to Cabo, designer shoes, and five-star dinners. Jason and Vanessa lived their entire lifestyle on the float of my credit score. "Okay, the joint checking is drained," she confirmed. "I've transferred the remaining balance, $42,000, to your new private trust. The credit card has been reported lost and stolen as of this minute. Any transactions attempted after 9 a.m. today will be declined." "And the authorized users?" I asked, leaning forward. "Removed. Their cards are now just plastic scrap." "Perfect," I said. "One last thing. The car lease." Ah, the Range Rover, the symbol of Vanessa's status. She drove it like a tank, terrorizing the neighborhood, but she didn't own a bolt of it. I co-signed the lease because Jason's credit was shot, and technically the payments came out of my account, which was now empty. I pulled out my phone and dialed the leasing company's recovery division. "Yes, this is Eleanor Vance. I'm terminating the lease on the white Range Rover. Voluntary repossession. Yes, the vehicle is currently at 42 Oak Drive. The keys are likely with the woman crying on the front lawn. You can pick it up immediately." I hung up and felt a weight lift off my chest. By the time the tow truck got there, Vanessa would be trying to load her rescued clothes into the trunk, only to find her getaway car hooked up to a winch. The image was delicious. My final stop was the airport. I wasn't going to Miami to visit my sister. I didn't even have a sister in Miami. I was flying first class to Italy. I had rented a villa in Tuscany for 6 months, paid in full with a deposit from the house sale. I settled into the leather seat of the airport lounge, ordering a glass of their finest champagne. I pulled out my phone. It had been blowing up for the last hour. 37 missed calls from Jason and 12 from the Devil, my contact name for Vanessa. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened Instagram. I knew Vanessa wouldn't be able to help herself. She lived her life online, and even a tragedy was content. Sure enough, she was live streaming. I clicked on her profile. The video was shaky, the camera pointed at the driveway. "You guys, I can't believe this is happening." Vanessa was sobbing into the camera, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. "My mother-in-law is a monster. She sold our house, and now, look." She panned the camera to the left. A tow truck was backing up to the Range Rover. The driver was hooking the chains to the bumper. "They're taking my car. She canceled the lease. We have nowhere to go. We have no car. Jason, do something."
The camera swung wildly to find Jason. He was sitting on a pile of cardboard boxes on the grass, holding his phone, looking pale as a ghost. My card. I tried to book a hotel room. It declined. It says the account is closed. Mom cut us off. She cut everything off. What do you mean she cut us off? Vanessa shrieked as the live stream froze for a second as the signal dropped. We have no money? Jason, tell me we have money. I I don't know, Jason stammered. The joint account shows 0. The comment section on the live stream was going wild. People were typing LOL, karma, and pay your own bills. Her carefully curated image of wealth and perfection was disintegrating in real time, broadcast to the very people she tried so hard to impress. I took a sip of champagne, the bubbles dancing on my tongue. They were stranded on the lawn of a house that was being demolished, with no car, no money, and no place to go. They had 48 hours to figure out how to survive in the real world, a world where you actually have to work for what you have. I decided to send one final text before I boarded the plane. I opened Jason's chat. Dear Jason, the trust fund you were waiting for doesn't exist. I spent it on the villa. The house money is with me. The car is gone. You're a grown man, son. It's time you learned how to stand on your own 2 feet. Don't bother looking for me. The phone number you are trying to reach has been disconnected. I hit send. Then I went to settings and selected deactivate SIM. The screen went black. I dropped the SIM card into my empty champagne glass and stood up. The boarding call for Rome came over the intercom. I grabbed my passport and my carry-on. I walked toward the gate, my heels clicking on the polished floor. Not like little hammers, but like a steady, rhythmic drumbeat of victory. I was 72 years old, homeless and single, and I had never felt more alive. My life wasn't ending, it was just beginning. And as for Jason and Vanessa, well, they always said they wanted to build something together. Now, starting from 0 was their perfect chance. I boarded the plane, took my window seat, and as the wheels lifted off the tarmac, leaving the toxicity of my old life far below, I closed my eyes and smiled. The view from the top was absolutely spectacular.